Morning. It is Monday, May 16th. It's a beautiful day in central Indiana. We're a few minutes late. I apologize. Technical difficulties. We're having a little May Monday here after a busy weekend, but it's an honor to be with you. I'm Chris Jensen, mayor of Noblesville, and we're here with another edition of Mental Health Monday with a great friend of mine, someone who has the patience of Job this morning working with us, getting this all set up. Kristen Boyce, the owner of Pathways to Healing. Good morning, Kristen Boyce.
Good morning, Mayor Jensen. I have only place to go is falling from that.
Yeah, that was a pretty high bar that I set for you there. Sorry about that, but it was true. And technology sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work, So, but we're here. We're glad to be here on a beautiful Monday. I hope wherever you are watching this show or if you're watching it later in the week, that it's a beautiful day as well. Get outside, get some fresh air. We've talked a lot about that, how important that is here. But we are excited to have another edition of Mental Health Monday with you today. We're actually having this edition right smack dab in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's all culminating here in May. We're going to talk a little bit about mental health awareness, what that looks like, confronting some transitions today. We got a lot of great topics to tackle. And of course, my good friend Kristen Boyce is going to help us tackle them here today. So few ground rules. If you have any questions during today's show, feel free to type them in or say hi. Hi, Emily Gaylord. She's our comms director. She's actually off on a little vacation today, but she's tuned in to Mental Health Monday, which we really appreciate. If you have any questions, type them in there. If you just want to say hi, type them in there as well. We love to hear from people. I love, Kristen, I'm sure you get the same thing as you go around the community throughout the weeks. People come up and whisper in your ear or thank you for something that just means so much. It means that we're doing some good work here. So I haven't even had a chance to say good morning to you, Kristen.
Good morning. I am excited to be here. I love doing these Mental Health Mondays with you, and I love it when we get questions and participation. So it's a true honor and privilege to be here today.
Well, the privilege is ours, definitely. So before we get started, as we always do, I was actually joking with Julie Jensen yesterday in the car on the way to a baseball tournament about square breathing. And so I'll let you lead us through that exercise as we get our mind and our bodies ready for a good discussion this morning.
Yes, I had to do lots of square breathing over the weekend as well. It's something I use every single day, every hour really of my life. I am using square breathing. I teach this to every client. And the purpose of square breathing is to come back to center. So we're not in the past, we're not in the future. We're managing our activation in our bodies and our triggers, and we're recentering, we're regrounding ourselves. That's the purpose of doing deep breathing and square breathing. So we start with our feet on the floor. Why do we do that? To really get our bodies in the here and now. And we press into our feet. We inhale for 4 through our nose. We hold for 4, and we exhale slowly out our mouths like you're cooling soup, or for the kiddos, cooling a cookie, or you're blowing a bubble. So we get that full benefit of releasing that tension and tightness that is trapped in the nervous system. So we'll do 2 breaths together. Feet on the floor. And even if you're standing, you're pressing into your feet. So press into your feet, really ground into that current space you're in. Big, deep inhale. Hold. And slowly release out your mouth. Just kind of check in with your nervous system. Let's do one more together. Big, deep inhale, pressing into your feet. Big, deep inhale. Hold. And release. I always say just kind of move your head side to side. A lot of us carry so much pressure and feel almost like we're carrying a burden in our shoulders. So noticing that and kind of doing some tight, shoulder shrugs up and then releasing your shoulders down. So you can really tend to yourself. We're kind of sleepwalking through our lives a lot of times and just going through the motions and disconnected from our bodies. This is a way to kind of caretake yourself in the moment, wherever you are. If you're in a meeting, if you're with your kiddos, if you're taking a walk, or you're on your computer, this is a way to tend to yourself.
Love it. Sorry, I had to turn the lamp on mid-conversation there. It was going to drive me nuts all day long. So Apologize. Love square breathing. Love the feeling of that release. I do it all the time. It seems so simple, and it is so simple, but needs to be practiced, just like with anything that we do. So I love that. All right, let's dive in. First of all, good morning, Scott Wood. Thanks for the thumbs up too. Glad that you're listening this morning. Let's talk a little bit. It's Mental Health Awareness Month in May. You and I have been at this for about 26 months, actually, this conversation, which is hard to believe. So you and I are pretty used to the conversation around mental health. I don't shy away from it. It doesn't bother me at all. It's a very normal mainstream. But from your seat as a practicing therapist, someone who challenges herself to be better every day around the idea of mental health, who challenges her patients to do that. Talk about what you've seen. What are some of the biggest differences you've seen in the past 24 months around the topic of mental health and normalization of it? Can you talk a little bit specifically, kind of from your seat as a professional, maybe what you're most proud of, what you've seen, and then maybe some areas that we have to go still?
Yeah, I want to say the first thing is COVID really ramped up this conversation. And COVID's brought out so much pain and loss and grief. And it's also, I love the and in both. And it's also brought up this conversation about emotional wellness and mental health. We have seen a strict uptake in mental health issues, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, in more than any time in history, especially for teens and youth. And I wanted to share some statistics to kind of really highlight not only what we're seeing at Pathways, but also just in general in the world, and specifically here in the United States, because we have seen a steady increase of suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, and substance abuse disorder really increasing during this time. So I thought I'd throw some things out there so you get a real good grasp of where we're at mental health wise and why this conversation continues to be absolutely paramount into talking about it, bringing it to the table, bringing it to the light. 1 in 5 Americans are struggling with their mental health. And I would actually say that's higher because many people don't report that they're struggling with mental health. They don't have access to services, and we're not able to track everybody. So in my opinion, that is much higher. That's a conservative number. And we're looking at 27 million Americans right now struggling with some sort of mental health issue. We all have mental health applies to everybody. It's not just one person. We all have mental health that needs to be taken care of. And I think that's an important part of this conversation. It's just not for those people. No, it's for all of us.
We all have health and we all have mental health.
Yes.
So I love that statement. It's not like, oh, they have a mental health challenge. No, everyone has mental health.
Yes. And are we tending to our mental health? Have we been taught about our mental health? Have we named it? Have we learned how to identify emotions and our body sensations? And here's another staggering statistic that I want to highlight that really came to light over the last couple of months with what we're seeing in the practice is substance abuse issues are up. I read the statistic 13% since the pandemic. I would say that's double, maybe even triple that. And I know that sounds staggering. And here's the statistic that I want people to know. Alcohol and substance abuse addictions, 90% of them start before the age of 18. 90% of them start before the age of 18. So I always ask people, when was your first sip of alcohol? How old were you? Who offered it to you? And not to pick on anybody, but it activates a part of your brain and your nervous system when you go, oh, wow, Grandpa Joe, doesn't matter who, but offered me a sip of alcohol at 7. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of activated a part of your nervous system that you didn't know what you turned on a switch. So I always ask, when was your first sip of alcohol? When did food become a comfort source? How old were you? What was going on during that time? When was anybody exposed to pills, painkillers, surgeries, things like that? We need to highlight these conversations that we're scared to have because we think, oh, well, that doesn't pertain to me. Everybody has a propensity to have an addiction, depending on, we have so many factors that factored into it. We have physiologically, we have family history, we have environmental factors, we have shame. And we don't talk about how shame is driving so much mental health issues. Shame is I'm flawed, I'm bad, there's something wrong with me, I'm defective. And that shame wants to take us into the dark abyss, into a hole, and hide and feel like we are not fit for consumption in this world, and we're not worthy, and we are not likable and lovable, and nobody really cares about us. It tells us all these lies. And that drives us wanting to hide and numb and withdraw and avoid because we feel so horrible inside. It leads us to depression and anxiety. And we need to have a conversation about shame. Everybody has shame. It's a matter of on a continuum. Just like I think of addictions, there's a continuum. It's how much does it, the impulse, the compulsions, the dependency, really impact you. So we're seeing a real increase with substance abuse and addictions of all sorts. Social media, we know when we look at that 90% statistic that starts before the age of 18, and we're giving our kids, access. I mean, we're all doing it. I'm not picking on anybody, just so you know. I mean, that activates a part of their brain that is stimulating that addictive response. So we're looking at phone usage, and it's not all bad or good. I love the and both. So it's not an all or nothing conversation. It's something to get us thinking about this in a different way. That's why our conversation on Mental Health Mondays can maybe spark a new way to think about something. Maybe open up your mind and to go, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. That's what we're doing with mental health awareness. We're looking at, are you doing your own self-reflection? And how much awareness are you having about kind of how things have impacted throughout your life? Not to blame or get stuck in that, to go, oh, that had more of an impact than I ever thought it did.
Yeah. So, I mean, based on all those comments, you just gave a nice long runway to the normalization of the discussion around mental health. One in five. I would say that's on the low end. And to your point, the city of Noblesville, as you know, Kristen, launched a program a couple of years ago called Noble Act, which is a proactive paramedicine program focused on mental health and addiction services and getting folks, getting them into the services that they need. We've actually seen an uptick every year of mental health calls to our police department. At first, you're like, oh, they're going up, and then you reset your thinking and say, no, that's great. It's becoming more of the awareness, that the destigmatization of the conversation is happening. That's why we're having more and more folks reach out for help. So it's actually consequently a very, very good thing that we're seeing those increases. So like I said, you and I are very comfortable with this conversation. And I hope anyone listening here that may have some concerns or can picture themselves in an awkward situation around this conversation sees the facts speak for themselves. So, but tell me, if you are that person, no blame, shame, or judgment at all, that's just still not quite there, or you may be comfortable with it, but you may see it in a family member, a mental health challenge, and you're just not sure how to address it, or you're teetering on the edge on how to continue to normalize this conversation. What kind of tips can we leave people with to help spur that conversation where it needs to happen?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is you can't fix, rescue, or save anybody. And this, we carry a big responsibility if a family member. Now, if it's your child, we have some responsibilities to get them help. That's not what I'm talking about. But we feel responsible to try to get this person to see the light. And they have to want to do that for themselves. Here's what I can say that I teach clients to do is have clear, direct, compassionate conversations with people. They're scared to say the wrong thing. They're scared to get a response or a negative or a reaction, an intense reaction from somebody. And if we just stuff down and suppress, we've talked about suppression leads to depression, how you're feeling or addressing something, it's going to create more anxiety in you. So I recommend saying something like, I love you so much. And we know don't use a but. That feels icky and like you just slimed on me. So you're going to say, I love you and I've noticed a change and I'm really wondering how you're feeling and what's going on for you. And when you say it in a tender way, not what are you doing? Like that tone is not the tone we're going to lead with because we're reacting to the tone and we want to go into self-protection mode. We can't control how someone's going to receive what we're saying. My suggestion also is if you're concerned someone's suicidal, you ask them, Do you want to kill yourself? And people are so afraid that they're going to plant a seed or activate an idea. No, you asking the question is bringing it to the light. And if you're afraid, here's what I recommend to people that are really scared. I say call 1-800-273-TALK. That's a suicide prevention hotline. You can get them on the phone, have them on speaker, and help you have the conversation with the person in the room. So you have support. I had someone come up to me after I spoke at the Indiana Indiana Center for Youth and Prevention of Child or of Abuse and Suicide. I'm saying it wrong, but
Yep. I know what you mean. I was there.
Yes. Someone came up after the talk and they said, I'm really scared to have the conversation. And I said, here's what you can do. You can call 1-800-273-TALK and have support. And she's like, oh, what a relief. I'm like, yes, you don't have to do this by yourself. You can have support. You can also text 741-741, type in TALK. If you don't want to talk, you just want to text someone. This is if you're struggling with suicide, ideation, wanting to not be here anymore. People will show you, typically not all the time, but they'll be showing you hints. They'll say, I wish I wasn't here anymore. I can't take this pain anymore. And ask more questions. Well, tell me what you mean by that. Do you have a plan? Do you have a way to do that? Do you have a timeline? If they say yes to any of those, you're going to take them to the nearest Community North. There's St. Vincent Stress Center. There's Eskenazi. There's options for you. You can always call 911. It's important that we are talking about how someone is feeling. We're not asking questions. How are you is a nice question, but really, how are you feeling? And they may not have the answer to that because they might not have the feeling, words, education on exactly what they're feeling. They say, I feel alone. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that is a great way for someone to feel like you care about them, to feel present. And I know it's scary to have these conversations. This is where we begin to make this more normalized instead of shying away from it, or we're not getting the training on how do we approach this. And so now I hope this helps you feel less anxious about it.
Well, I think you make a great point. I've used the phrase several times, and I've worked hard not to. But the whole oh, you see something seems off, or you seem off, and instantly folks get very defensive when you say that. And so, to your point about softening that, and hey, I've seen some changes. Tell me more what's going on in your life, or tell me more about that. And versus instantly something's off. Well, I don't want to be off. I don't. Off is bad. Right? Am I on the right track there?
It brings shame. Then you think,
yeah, shame. Like, oh crap, right? They caught me. I'm off.
You don't mean to shame the person, but it doesn't land as caring. It lands as shame, and so that's what we need to. Or man, you look really tired.
Yeah, I love that.
Like, thank you. Thanks. I look like crap. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
I am tired, but that's a whole nother discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. So when someone says that, it doesn't land as caring, even though the intentions of the person might be, I really care about you. Say that.
Right.
Say that I really care about you. I really, really want to know how you're feeling and what's going on for you. Very different.
Yeah.
And what's wrong? You've been acting so different lately.
Yeah.
Okay, my tone changed, how I said it changed, and I kind of want to bristle and I'm not going to open up to you. I kind of recoil because that shame comes up.
Well, I think we are wired as people too that we fear the unknown. So these conversations around, especially on the suicidal conversation, are you going to kill yourself? You don't want to know what that answer is, but don't you? I would certainly rather want to know the answer, and if I can do something about it. And you have to kind of not push through that moment on yourself, but realize it's not about you. It's about helping someone else. And if that's what helps that person, then we got to be willing to ask that question and accept the answer and know that we are here. That's why we're having these conversations to tool up, skill up, give folks the tools necessary to help guide those conversations going forward. So it's
true. And it's scary. It's a tough thing to ask somebody. Yeah. And I don't want to minimize that at all. Yep. And that's why I want you to feel support. Everybody listening to go, we're with you in this. And there is support resources available for you when you call 1-800-273-TALK to have that. So it's still hard. I'm not minimizing that at all. And we don't want you to have to do that alone if you need that support.
Yep. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about too something that I think is very topical in the month of May because we're heading into summertime. There may be some kids that are transitioning to new schools. I know I have a fifth grader that's going to go to the middle school. We talked a little bit about that. You may be transitioning from a normal school schedule to a summer camp schedule. You may be in the middle of a job transition. I want to touch a little bit about transitions and coping with changes because that's always really, really hard to do. And so I thought we would kind of maybe end our conversation this morning talking about some coping skills around transitions because everyone always has them going on in life. Daniel Gross, I'm so glad to see you commenting on here. I've been thinking about you a lot. Phenomenal photographer, by the way. So let's talk a little bit about transitions and what that looks like in people's lives and how they cope with that.
So transitions are inevitable. Change is inevitable. Some people really thrive on change and other people don't. Some kids really do well with it and others really, it's a lot in their nervous system. So I wrote down 5 things that I thought was essential so I could kind of pare it down. I love 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's easier for my brain to recall things. So the first thing I wrote down is self-awareness, like knowing how do you handle change, or if it's for your kiddo, how do they normally handle change or typically, and preparation. So you're going to have conversations with your kiddo about the change, maybe physically going to the new school or new location where they're going to be, or a new home if they're transitioning to a new home, pictures, meeting teachers, going to the facility. And I know lots of in Noblesville does that very well with transitions. And for you, if you're making transitions, it can bring up things from your past that you thought you were over. You thought that was in the past. And be gentle with yourself so you can kind of feel like your little self, your little inner child is getting kind of brought online when there's transitions. So here's the second thing. So this is number 2. Number 2 is really at this point in the game when we have transitions, and I want to say this kind of really clearly, we have to check our expectations. I wrote that down in capital letters because we think we're supposed to be this way, or this is going to be just beautiful and just fine. And we really hype up this positive, which is okay. And we have to process how it really feels. How does
fine?
Yes, fine. Feelings
inside not expressed.
So we go, I love that you caught that.
Oh, we do it all the time. Julia Jensen and I throw that back at each other all the time. Just fine. Nope.
Nope. What's really going on? So really that emotions, we've talked about core emotions. What's underneath it? Lots of fear for people. Lots of fear. There's other emotions, but you want to say, what are you afraid of? Ask that question of yourself. Ask that question of your kids. They may not know. That's okay. You don't need to keep pushing and just say, hey, I get that. That's okay to have fears. It's okay to feel the way you do. And I want you to watch, number 3 is watch how you talk to yourself during these transitions. Shame tends to rear its head. And we think, what's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to be fine, but I seem to be struggling. And our self-talk goes in the gutter, because it's bringing up a lot of grief. Typically, number 4, what we see with transitions that we're not talking about is grief. We have grief, even though we want maybe the transition and maybe we don't want the transition, there's still grief. And you'll see if you ever have gone on a vacation and you're coming back to reality, or if you go back to childhood and you're like, have all these memories of a vacation, whether they're good or bad. But typically, if you've had a positive experience, so to speak, you're going to feel sad about leaving that place, or you're going to feel dread about coming back to your daily life, or in general, just the micro transitions of even dropping a kid off at school, or you transitioning from your morning, routine to then getting on a Zoom call. These are all transitions that have emotions attached to them, and knowing, what am I feeling? What is this bringing up? Oh, let me check to see if there's some grief or unprocessed grief. So some sadness, maybe some anger, maybe a little bit of fear. Check it, process it, journal about it, talk about it. When we can do that with someone we care about, which is number 5, having a support system. Because when we have transitions, and you might feel like so many people alone in them, but lots of people have also had these transitions. They might not feel exactly the way you do. Typically, they just don't know it because they haven't rumbled through that transition. It's helpful to have a support system, whatever that looks like. So if it's other parents going through it, or if it's coworkers, or maybe you need a 12-step program like Al-Anon, Alateen, AA, Codependence Anonymous. We have so many support systems available to help you with transitions, especially if you're going through sobriety. And that's a huge transition. I highly recommend getting into a 12-step program and therapy. I mean, therapy is also wonderful if you need extra support, if it is pulling up something from your past that you thought you were over and you really need to tend to it. Therapy is also an answer.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you condensing that into 5 things. I think there's something there for everybody as this goes on. I was mentioning earlier that we're kind of going through the transition with my oldest going to middle school. And I was asking him the other day kind of what he was most nervous. He said he was nervous about it, and asked can you guess what he's most nervous about?
Friendships.
Not that. Do you have another guess? The
Me
locker
too.
combination.
Oh, the lockers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I know. And I was like,
about my
I
locker.
still remember mine, 28, 30, 32, and I can tell you my exact combo from high school. But it's just so funny. That's where his head's at. That is where his head's at. So we're going to practice this summer on some locker combinations and get that down. 28, 38, 34. Sorry, I was wrong. I knew that would come to me. But yeah, it's just, but it's just things like that again, and just exposure. He's actually going to the middle school, I think, tomorrow on a field trip over there to see it and get used to it. So
now you can process that with him when he gets home.
Yeah. I loved it. Yeah. So been good conversations around that. So Kristen, this is awesome. I love that we're having this conversation smack dab in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Month. Every day, in my opinion, is Mental Health Awareness Day in our life. We've got to talk about it more. I appreciate your willingness to talk with us about it. I appreciate the people who always come alongside us and listen and learn and ask questions. So if someone's struggling right now, I know you already mentioned the suicide line, but anywhere else they need to be looking towards?
I also recommend Prevail. If you're struggling with any domestic violence, emotional abuse, Prevail here in Noblesville, Indiana. If you're here locally, highly recommend them. You can get online and they can help you with protective orders. They have support groups. They also have teen support groups. If any teens have been in abusive relationships or they're having trouble breaking that pattern, I highly recommend their support groups. We also have Brooks Place for kids that have gone through any grief or loss. And I know we've talked to Brooks Place on here before. And there's so many resources here locally on the City of Noblesville Facebook page or on the website. There's a link to all of the community resources that can be of service to you.
Yep. When we appreciate it so much, everyone, we will see you back here in 2 weeks for another edition of Mental Health Monday. In the meantime, actually, I bet you 2 weeks is Memorial Day. So
it is.
We'll probably see you in 3 weeks back here for another edition of Mental Health Monday. In the meantime, get outside, enjoy the sunshine. Kristen Boyce, thank you for all that you continue to do and stay safe, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.